Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ryan Clifton Bowling. I was reading an article from the Daily Wire titled Morning Wire, which is a section of the Daily Wire, and it is in reference to the possibility that the Biden administration may have assisted the school systems and the FBI's attempt to call parents who were protesting against CRT in their schools and transgenderism as domestic terrorists. In other words, the article suggests that the Biden administration was assisting them in this. Now, it's not saying that actually the Biden administration actually was. It's just a suggestion, and there's compelling evidence to support that belief. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read that article. It's a pretty short article. I'm going to read that article. And then when I'm finished reading that article, I'm going to give you a little bit of history and a little bit of information on what I personally believe is an attempt to literally put Christians and conservatives in concentration camps that is scattered throughout America in order to eliminate, i.e. KILL, kill them. And I know that's an extreme statement, but it is based on factual data. So I'm going to read this article and then I'm going to give you guys that information. So let's go right into the article right now. So the title of the article is Emails Call into Question Origins of Domestic Terrorist Letter. In October, a letter from a national school board group was used by the Biden administration to justify the mobilization of the federal government against parents protesting school policies. But newly released emails show the Biden administration may have played a key role in the letter from the beginning. In October, a letter was sent by two members of the National School Boards Association, also abbreviated NSBA, comparing parents protesting against classroom policies like critical race theory curriculum and transgender policies to domestic terrorists. They suggested, as these acts of malice, violence, and threats against public school officials have increased, the classification of these heinous actions could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes. Let me say something real quick about that. I find it interesting. Look at the terms that they're using. Acts of malice, violence, and threats against public school officials have increased. Have there been any documented acts of violence from these parents? I haven't heard of any. If there is, let me know in the comment box below. But according to a recently uncovered email exchange, the letter at the center of the controversial comparison of protesting parents to domestic terrorists appears to have been solicited by President Biden's Education Secretary McGuire Cordena. The letter asks federal law enforcement to assist local law enforcement and to use federal law, including the Patriot Act, which incidentally was created under the Bush administration after the 9/11 situation happened. So it says use federal law, including the federal act, to, quote, examine appropriate enforceable actions, end quote. After a heavy backlash, the NSBA apologized for the language. Well, really? So if you apologize for it, then clearly you were exaggerating. Exaggerating is just another way of lying, okay? The Department of Justice continued to use the letter and cited it to justify its own memo mobilizing the FBI. During a committee hearing, Senator Chuck Grassley asked Biden's Attorney General, Merrick Garland, whether he would rescind the DOJ memo, but Garland refused. According to the newly uncovered email from early October, the NSBA's Secretary-Treasurer said their interim COO told officers he was writing a letter to provide information to the White House following a request by Education Secretary Cardona. These emails were obtained by the parents group Parents Defending Education in a Freedom of Information Act request. Nicole Nelly, president and founder of the group, pointed out that the original timeline given was that the NSBA sent a letter which was used to mobilize the FBI and other federal law enforcement against protesting parents. However, if Secretary Cardona was as involved as he appears to be, the crusade against parents may have originated from within the Biden administration. This would, as she put it, be, quote, a significant breach of public trust, end quote. And that's the end of that article. So you heard that, right? You've heard that. And the article is suggesting that this is not totally, it's not saying that the Biden administration was clearly, Biden may have knew about it or not. Me personally, I'm pretty sure that he did know. That's just my opinion. Now, sometimes he kind of off in his brain, but, I'm pretty sure they knew. I'm pretty sure officials in the Biden administration knew. But here's what I wanted to say about this. This whole idea of accusing parents who come against critical race theory and transgenderism and far leftist ideologies designed to corrupt our children in the school as domestic terrorists goes back a long way. This is just a way, as far as I'm concerned, to demonize certain groups that are against their agenda. The FBI and other agencies in the United States have two main groups, rather, that are on their top of the list of terrorists. Guess what they are? Conservatives and Christians. Conservatives and Christians. You may ask, why is that? Because conservatives and Christians tend to be, for the most part, lovers of the Constitution. Even if Christians are not fully aware of it, some of them are and some of them aren't. Lovers of the Constitution and patriotic. Lovers of the Constitution and patriotic individuals cannot be a part of a insurgent of Marxist revolutionaries who want to change America. Those two worldviews are in opposition against each other, so they have to get rid of conservatives and Christians and anyone that dissents against their agenda. Now, let me give you a little bit of history here. How long this has been going on? There was an FBI agent, FBI informant by the name of Larry Griswold or something. I cannot pronounce that man's last name. I probably butchered it. He was an FBI informant. He infiltrated the Weather Underground, which was a radical far leftist communist group that had infiltrated America during the so-called counterculture, and they helped push the counterculture of the 1960s, incidentally. He infiltrated one of their meetings in 1969. Bill Ayers was there. Bill Ayers was one of the founders of the Weather Underground. And right now, Bill Ayers is a tenured professor, I believe, at Columbia University, but that's a whole nother story. He infiltrated this meeting of the Weather Underground. It was about 25 people. He infiltrated their meeting. Bill Ayers was there. The FBI informant asks one of the individuals, he says, what are we going to do about capitalists who don't want to change, don't want to give up their capitalist view, don't want to change? What are we going to do about these kind of people? And the man inside the meeting told him, we're going to have to eliminate them. And then they began to talk further. The FBI informant, Larry, began to ask further questions of inquiry, and the man told him, we're going to have to eliminate 25 million of them in concentration camps. And he stated that in the meeting, it shocked him. And I'm paraphrasing some of his words, but it shocked him because here he was in a meeting with people, highly educated individuals who had all kinds of high-level degrees, talking about eliminating 25 million patriotic individuals in concentration camps, eliminating people who are capitalists, who adhere to this independency. Let's get rid of them. Let's kill them off. 25 million of them. Concentration camps, it is common knowledge that there has been executive orders that have been written by both Democratic politicians and Republican politicians, or rhinos, that pose as Republicans, that basically are saying that if there's some kind of revolutionary situation or war or whatever, they have concentration camps or detention camps all over this country to place people in. But I believe that those detention camps are created for conservatives and Christians, for people who oppose the Marxist revolution. Now, to add to that belief, there was a man by the name of Paul McGuire. Some of you probably heard of him. He's a well-known international prophecy teacher and pastor and expert in end-time events. He said that many years ago, he was on his way to a Christian conference, and he was accompanied by a man by the name of Jerry Boykin. Jerry Boykin was the head of Delta Force back in the 90s, I believe. And when they arrived at the Christian convention, Paul McGuire asked Jerry Boykin what was the purpose of the concentration camps or re-education camps in America. And by the way, Jerry Boykin, not only was he the head of the Delta Force, he also helped assist assist in the rescue of servicemen that were left in, I think, Iran, and he helped assist them in delivering these guys out of captivity. This is also known as Black Hawk Down. And we all know the movie Black Hawk Down from the 90s. Okay, anyway. He asked him, what is the real purpose of these concentration camps? And he said, Jerry Boykin looked him in the eye and said, if you had asked me that 20-something years ago, I would have told you that the concentration camps are created in case of a war or what was it? I think he said a war or an invasion. That's what he said, an invasion. But he said many military experts believe now that the purpose of the concentration camps and re-education camps is basically to detain all people who do not agree with a revolution. That's what it's for. Now connect that with what I just mentioned about the Weather Underground and the so-called elimination of 25 million patriots, so to speak, basically. And you see the connection. You see the dots being connected. Jerry Boykin was also a Marxist, an expert in Marxist insurgencies. So this man had been studying Marxist insurgencies for quite some time. So he understood how these Marxist communist insurgents had basically infiltrated all the institutions in our country. Education, politics, religion, entertainment, you name it. They had infiltrated, and he was an expert in Marxist insurgencies. So if anybody had any factual knowledge about this, he would. So I believe that is what that's for. I know that sounds frightening, but when you connect it to the article I just read, I believe that they're working on it. A little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. That's my opinion on that. But what do you guys think about this article I just read to you? What do you think about that? Do you think the Biden administration was familiar with this, that they were familiar with what was going on and they were working behind the scenes to help felicitate this idea that these parents were basically domestic terrorists? Come on now. Come on, let's do the math. I'm going to end it on this note. It's interesting that they call FBI and others, and the school board call these parents domestic terrorists. But the actual terrorists in this country is not conservatives. It's these far leftist groups like the Weather Underground, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and other far leftist radical groups who commit these acts of violence in this country time and time and time again. And not only that, but listen to me carefully, hold your hats. The other radical group is radical Islam. I said radical Islam, not all Islam. Radical Islam. That's what 9/11 was, okay? These were radical Islam. These were radical Muslims, not regular Muslims, okay? So let's get this straight. I'm not Islamophobic. But all these radical far leftist groups were the ones and are the ones that's creating all these problems for America, but they're protected. They're protected. You see what's going on here? Just wanted to say that. I just want to give you guys a bit of information. I personally believe that perhaps the Biden administration was familiar with this and they're working on it behind the scenes. But hey, exposure of what they're doing, I believe, is the best policy. Exposing what they're doing so people can get educated and get informed and set up systems where they won't be overtaken. They know how to fight for their basic rights. I'm not talking about necessarily with guns. Hopefully it don't come to that. But I'm talking about with ideology and information. So what do you guys think? If you, whatever thought you have, please leave your comments in the comment section below. If you like this video, press the like button, share this video, and subscribe. God bless you all, and see you again.